Hello and welcome to this presentation. You've lived through many changes that helped develop our country. Some of us, born later, saw it as ancient history, but you all viewed it as a current event. This is our attempt to invoke memories of your life back then. Thank you for your sacrifices and perseverance. Let's take a very selective walk down memory lane. A quick look at the cost of items. Historical data doesn't isolate to Princeton only. Outside of first-class stamps, prices rose quickly during this time. Some of the growth is related to the post-war boom. We've added a couple extra years just for comparison. These homes are now part of a walking tour. These homes have long been admired in our community. Let's kick off the 40s with a look at historical events outside of Princeton. You may remember the ration stamps. It's something many of us can only imagine with fear. This generation sacrificed so much for America's future. Shoes were no longer something you simply bought. They were something you saved your stamps for. In January of 1943, payroll tax withholding began. They called it withholding, pay as you go. Some swore the government had finally figured out how to pick a man's pocket. Others felt it's really steadier this way, no big tax bill hanging over us. As we know, it didn't turn out to be temporary. Small acts of courage stitched the morning together. D-Day was only the beginning. The road to Paris and eventually to Berlin would be long and hard, but for that day, June 6, 1944, the tide had turned, carried forward by thousands of ordinary people who had stepped into an extraordinary history. They called it Colossus. It was built in secrecy. It read encrypted messages on punch paper tape at 5,000 characters per second. The machine is credited for breaking the Lorenz cipher, which was used for high-level German communications. Colossus is credited with shortening the war by many months, possibly years. Hubert Humphrey promised fairness, that every citizen, no matter their background, would have a voice and a chance. He was elected mayor of Minneapolis on his second attempt and would go on to be the vice president of the United States. September 2, 1945, aboard the USS Missouri, Japan formally surrendered. This time, the whole world seemed to excel. In the villages, cities, deserts, and islands, radios crackled with the same astonishing truth. The war was over. Named after the Bikini Atoll, where the United States conducted atomic tests, the two-piece bathing suit made its debut in Paris, the center of all new fashion. While this was a big change at the time, issuing both praise and claims of indecency, the creativity with swimwear continues to today. Polio had come again. In order to reduce the spread, children were expected to be quarantined. Classes in Minneapolis were conducted via radio. Radio was universal, TVs were not, and all this happened before the vaccine that finally came in the 1950s. The crowd at Ebbets Field buzzed like any other opening day. Jackie, the first black man in professional baseball, took his position at first base. He was cheered and taunted, and in the end, he showed all what he can do. He was Rookie of the Year, but more than that, he cracked a barrier for black youth that has yielded many great athletes. Truman signed the National Security Act. With the stroke of his pen, the military was reorganized under a new Department of Defense. The Army Air Forces became an independent United States Air Force, and the Central Intelligence Agency was born with the mission to fight with information. Interracial marriage was still illegal in many U.S. states, particularly in the South. That same year, a decision by the California Supreme Court struck down the state's ban, marking a major legal turning point. Truman campaigned across the country via train. He made 4 stops in Minnesota and campaigned on the relationship between farms and cities. Cities' prosperity generated clients for the farms, and how his plan intended to support both. He won the election. Inside the box was nearly everything a home baker would need: flour, sugar, powdered eggs, leavening. All there was to do was add water, mix, and bake. A cardboard package reshaped the American kitchen. National Geographic magazine published a feature story in Minnesota. The photos truly show the diversity. Not all the photos are shown here. We're going to take a quick look at some of the popular toys in the 40s. Well, some of you were older and perhaps not playing with them. For others, these may be fond memories. The wood was used as it was more readily available. They are still available and enjoyed today. While this Dick Tracy version is no longer made, there are many new variations of detective games today. Plastic has replaced the wood. The game is still played today and has many forms, including representing cities. Princeton has a couple of versions. Still very popular, and trains either can run around the Christmas decor or take over entire homes. Scaled down musical instruments like pianos, harmonicas, accordions, and other keyboard instruments were very popular. Its lightweight and portable design was popular with families. The real potato, or other vegetable, was soon replaced by the plastic version we still enjoy today. Movies and music define eras. Let's take a quick stroll through the 40s. It won 6 Academy Awards, including Best Picture, and was praised for boosting Allied morale. Bing Crosby's version became the most famous recording and a holiday classic. The playful melody contrasted with pointed lyrics about local women and American soldiers, sparking discussion and some radio censorship. Praised for its realistic portrayal of addiction, helping Hollywood to a more serious, socially conscious storytelling. The diary offers an intimate, first-hand account of a Jewish teenager's thoughts, fears, hopes, and daily life while hiding during the Holocaust. The animated short paved the way for the even more famous 1964 TV special and still is a loved Christmas show today. The story follows a platoon exploring the physical hardships of combat as well as the psychological struggles of fear, power, and survival. Princeton was ever changing during this time. Unfortunately, digital and paper records are not easily available to reconstruct. Let's start off with a few pictures to trigger your memory. First, we have a street view of downtown Princeton. On the other end, we have the Armory, the place of many events. You may recall Lovelorn from the Princeton Tiger, who appears to have provided practical, no coddling advice. There's a dedicated section of this event at the Princeton Historical Society. Odegaard solicited the POWs to come here to help with the potato harvest. Volunteers were taken. All were Italian. They were paid, well fed, and welcomed into the community. As an aside, there was a cigarette donation drive in Princeton to send to the troops overseas. Imagine that today. This was the county's original courthouse in Princeton before Mille Lacs County seat moved to Malacca in 1922, and the Princeton building was demolished in 1945. After passing the city ordinance establishing a municipal liquor store in February of 1946, Princeton's first municipal liquor store officially opened in 1947. Crystal Cabinets opened in 1947. This is a picture of the current building. It was founded by Tom Hammer, who began building cabinets in his garage. Since then, the company has grown into a major custom cabinetry manufacturer and continues to operate in Princeton with over 500 employees. A short 20 years post-graduation, our esteemed class of 48 gathered together for a reunion. They still look wonderful. I think it's fitting to end the 40s with the faculty who were mostly there to kick off the 50s, a nod to those who helped shape our PHS grads. Fashion marks a generation just by the look. Utility clothing regulations in the United States and Britain limited excess fabric and trims. Accessories such as gloves, hats, and seam stockings remained essential throughout the decade. By the late 1940s, after fabric and material rationing ended, more elegant styles returned, including higher heels. Women's casual clothing became more practical, sturdy fabrics, trousers, and headscarves while working. Early 1940s men's fashion was shaped by World War II rationing, leading to simpler suits with narrower lapels, fewer pockets, and minimal fabric use. By the late 1940s, men's fashion returned to a more relaxed and fuller suits, patterned ties, and fedoras. During World War II, leather rationing limited shoe production, so men commonly wore sturdy, practical styles such as plain-toe Oxfords and service-style shoes. Men's casual clothing became more practical and relaxed. Cars in the 40s and 50s are still highly desired. We should note that due to the war, no new models were made in 1940 to 1945. I'll pause on each screen and let the vehicles speak for themselves. Welcome to the 50s. Those who graduated in the 40s are off to the next season of their life: college, working, marriage, children, and sadly, war. North Korean forces had crossed the 38th parallel. The Korean people scrambled to move away from imminent danger. There was no warning. The U.S. joined forces with South Korea. The machine wasn't meant for cooking. The chocolate bar had turned soft, melted from the machine. The next day, popcorn kernels were placed near the magnetron. Within seconds, they began to pop. Engineers ducked as white kernels burst in the air. The microwave was born. For the first time, the presidency itself was being given a limit. Now Congress had sent a constitutional amendment to the states, and one by one they had ratified it. The 22nd Amendment was officially certified. 2 terms, no more. Before podcasts, there was Paul Harvey starting off each story with rest of the story. He delivered the news differently. He slowed down. He leaned into suspense. He let silence do the part of the work. His words came measured, building toward that unmistakable sign off. And now you know the rest of the story. With the growing use of black and white TVs, new styles of shows were born. I've Got a Secret. It was playful, surprising, harmless fun, a mixture of mystery and personality. Her father, King George VI, was dead. Elizabeth was only 25, and now she was queen. She was trained in ceremony and duty. As we all know, she had a long reign. She held on tight to traditions and expectations of her role from the start to the end. Salk tested the vaccine on himself, then on his wife, then on his 3 young sons. It was a quiet act of courage. The vaccine triggered antibodies. 2 years later, after the largest medical trial in history, the vaccine was deemed safe, effective, and potent. A young man named Hugh Hefner didn't even put a date on the cover. Its first cover featured Marilyn Monroe. 10,000 copies were initially printed, more than 50,000 copies sold. Dr. Joseph Murray had a bold idea: transplant a healthy kidney from one twin into his identical twin. The operation didn't just save one life, it opened the door to modern transplant medicine. The Secret Storm premiered, inviting viewers into the lives of the wealthy Ames family in the fictional town of Woodbridge. What began as a single broadcast in 1954 would go on for nearly 2 decades. Jim Henson was trying to solve a simple problem. He found an old green coat his mother was throwing away. From it, he cut a soft, simple shape. The result wasn't glamorous, but the little green character had personality. They named him Kermit. The bus driver told 4 black passengers in Rosa's row to stand so a white man could sit. Rosa stayed seated. Minutes later, she was arrested. Rosa Parks' simple, steady act of courage helped ignite a movement that would change the course of history. They wanted to make machines think. John McCarthy gave their ambition a name: artificial intelligence. In 1956, artificial intelligence wasn't a product. It was a daring question written on a chalkboard. From the outside, Southdale Center looked modern but modest. Inside, it was a revelation. Shoppers stepped through the doors and stopped in wonder. There was no wind whipping through coats. Southdale became the first fully enclosed shopping mall. What opened as an experiment in Minnesota would soon reshape shopping across the nation. Teenagers gathered on a polished dance floor. The music started. Hi, I'm Dick Clark. American Bandstand had just made its national debut. What began as a local dance program became a national stage for a generation finding its voice. An engineer used small components, wires, and a battery pack. The result was a compact device that could be worn, portable and independent of wall power. When he brought it to the hospital, the doctors connected the small battery-powered pacemaker to the child. The heart began to beat. Twins were awarded the Senators franchise. They would now be in the MLB. The Met was constructed and became a field of many things over its lifetime. In the summer of 1958, Minnesota turned 100 and decided to throw itself a party. Pioneers were honored with covered wagon reenactments and frontier villages. In addition to looking back to 1858, the celebration honored progress, modern highways, growing cities, and new industries. In 1959, the American flag was about to change. For nearly 50 years, it carried 48 stars. On January 3, 1959, Alaska became the 49th state. Just months later, on August 21st, Hawaii followed. For centuries, humans had tried to predict the weather by watching the horizon, studying barometers, and reading shifting winds. The United States launched the world's first weather satellite. The data was imperfect, the instruments limited, but the idea was revolutionary. Storms could be tracked from orbit. As with the 40s, we're going to take a quick look at toys that came out in the 50s. Players tossed large, weighted darts with metal points towards plastic rings placed on the ground, aiming for accuracy much like horseshoes. Early Viewmaster reels featured real photographs of scenic travel destinations, landmarks, and popular cultural subjects. Gabby is prized by collectors today for its classic Fisher-Price design and playful mechanical action, a great example of popular wooden toys from the early 1950s. Games' popularity grew in early 1950s. Wiffle ball sets were inexpensive, portable, and easy for play in yards, parks, and streets. In 1954, what became Play-Doh was being marketed as wallpaper cleaner. Teachers soon discovered children loved using the soft compound for arts and crafts. The hula hoop craze reflected the booming post-war consumer culture of the 50s, turning a simple plastic ring into one of the biggest toy sensations of the decade. The Betsy McCall doll was known for her wholesome, childlike appearance and detailed, stylish outfits that mirrored real children's fashions of the time. Silly putty was discovered accidentally during World War II research. It turned into a novelty craze, loved by kids for its ability to stretch, snap, and bounce in ways no other toy could at the time. Color forms were introduced as a reusable, final stick-on shapes that children could arrange and rearrange to create scenes. Barbie quickly became a cultural icon, expanding countless careers, outfits, and accessories, becoming one of the best-selling toys in history. The 50s music had a big impact on the growth of rock and roll. The song remains a folk standard, recognized for bridging blues and mainstream pop and introducing many listeners to traditional American folk music. Known for its powerful themes of desire, illusion, and mental decline, the film pushed emotional boundaries in Hollywood and remains a classic of American cinema. Often interpreted as an allegory for the Hollywood blacklist and McCarthy era politics, the film explored themes of courage, isolation, and moral responsibility. Known for its emotional depth and mature themes, the film examined loyalty, love, and military life, becoming one of the most acclaimed dramas of the 1950s. Often called one of the first major rock and roll hits, it played a key role in bringing the new sound to teenage audiences and changing popular music forever. As one of the first major Broadway musicals successfully adapted to film in the 1950s, it helped set the standard for future movie musicals. This song became one of the best-selling singles of the 1950s and helped cement Elvis's status as the king of rock and roll. Its success led to later remakes in 1965 and 1997, making it one of the most beloved televised musicals in American history. The movie explored themes of family conflict, greed, and repressed desire, though some elements of the original play were softened to meet the 1950s film censorship standards. Inspired by medieval art, a distinctive detailed background style that set the film apart from earlier Disney animations. Princeton's 50s era continued to shape the town we have today. Very talented artists depicting scenes that some of you may recall. January 1951, picture taken in front of the Armory. The local National Guard was called up and sent to Camp Rucker in Alabama. Then many were sent to Korea. As far as clubs go, this one is unique. We didn't see a record of it prior to 52 and none after. It appears to be an interesting one-off for PHS. The Kitten Club operated as a bar and dance hall. It was known as a lively weekend gathering spot. Princeton Speedway, unofficially opened in 1954 in Princeton, has a local track built to host stock car racing. It became so popular that they made it official in 1956 and it is still in operation today. Calls averaged 178 outgoing only per day in 1955 at the Princeton Bell Telephone Company. The operators handled both long distance and local calls. Centennial Parade, Winifred and Bill Nichols dressed as Uncle Sam and Betsy Ross. The Historical Society has a lot of information available for the centennial year. Perhaps some of you can explain to the rest of us what the red ear of corn means. The creamery was an important industry in Princeton. In 1958, it celebrated 50 years of existence. Like other industries, this one is no longer here. This was built as part of the post-war boom. It's another part of our history that was removed to make way for the future. Fashion began its trend to more casual wear and clothing that suited the increased women in the workforce. Early 1950s women's fashion was heavily influenced by the new look, featuring cinched waist, full skirts, soft shoulders, and an hourglass silhouette. Tailored suits and shirtwaist dresses were common daytime outfits for adult women. Accessories were essential to completing an outfit. Pointed toe pumps with mid to high heels were a staple. Casual styles like saddle shoes and ballet flats worn with poodle skirts were popular among teenagers. Fashion featured conservative, tailored suits with narrow ties, crisp white shirts, and fedoras. Polished leather Oxfords and loafers were popular. Casual footwear like saddle shoes and two-tone spectator shoes became especially popular among teenagers, often paired with cuffed jeans or slacks for a classic rock and roll look. Once again, I will pause on each slide and let the cars represent. Thank you for taking this flashback to your past. We hope this stirs some fond memories for all of you.